A single cow can produce something like 15 gallons of milk every single day. But have you ever stopped to think about how it actually releases it? It's not like a faucet that's just always running. Nope. It's actually a hidden reflex, a kind of biological key that has to unlock the milk. So, in this explainer, we're going to go find that key and figure out exactly how it works. All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll tackle what I'm calling the milk paradox. Then we'll take a little tour inside the milk factory itself. From there, we'll follow the journey of a signal, see what the brain does with that message, and watch the final squeeze. And to wrap it all up, we'll see why all this biology matters out in the real world, in the barn. Okay, let's kick things off with what I like to call the milk paradox. You see, a cow's udder is basically a locked vault. And that brings up a really simple but super important question. I mean, think about it. The cells inside that udder are cranking out milk 24/7. So why doesn't it just leak out all the time? Well, the answer's pretty cool. The vast majority of that milk is stored away in millions, and I mean millions, of tiny microscopic vaults. And to get the milk out, you need a very specific key to unlock them. And this right here is the absolute key to understanding this whole thing. We've got two totally separate processes going on. On one hand, you have milk production. The technical term is lactogenese. That's happening all the time. But then you have milk ejection, the letdown reflex, and that's a completely separate reflex action to actually release the milk. So yeah, making it and releasing it, totally different jobs. So if we want to understand the lock, we got to take a tour of the vault, right? Let's take a look inside this incredible biological factory, the cow's udder. Now, you might think the milk is just sitting in these big storage areas, the cisterns, and you'd be partly right. But here's the crazy part. That only accounts for maybe 20 to 30% of the total milk. The real stash, the main payload, is hidden away somewhere else entirely. And this is it. This is where the magic happens. What you're looking at is called an alveolus. It's a tiny hollow sac, and there are millions of them inside the udder. Each one is its own little microscopic milk factory. You can see the blood vessels bringing in all the raw materials. But the real secret? It's those muscle cells wrapped around the outside. Those are the key to the vault. These little guys are called myoepithelial cells. The best way to picture them is like a tiny muscular net or a basket wrapped super tightly around every single one of those millions of alveoli. They're basically the gatekeepers. They hold that milk locked up tight until they get a very specific order to squeeze. Okay, so how in the world do millions of these tiny little muscle cells get the message to squeeze at the exact same time? Well, it all starts with a single trigger, a signal that's got to travel all the way from the teat to the brain's command center. It's this really elegant process called a neuroendocrine reflex. A great analogy is to think of it like a biochemical doorbell. First, someone's got to press the button, right? That could be a calf suckling or a farmer washing the udder. That press sends an electrical nerve signal shooting up to the brain. And the brain's response? It sends out a chemical message. And what's just wild is the precision of this whole system. The signal doesn't just wander around the brain looking for the right department. No way. It travels up a dedicated superhighway, a specific nerve pathway that leads directly to this tiny specialized inbox in a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. It's like a message with a very, very specific delivery address. All right, so the doorbell has been rung. The message has arrived at its destination. Now it's up to the brain's command center to process it and send out the order. Open the vaults. And that command center, it's the hypothalamus. This part of the brain is just amazing. It's like mission control for the entire body, keeping everything in balance. So it gets that nerve signal from the teat, and what does it do? It immediately triggers a hormonal response. This is the exact point where the nervous system hands off the baton to the endocrine system, the hormone system. The special messenger it sends out is a hormone called oxytocin. Now, it's actually made in the hypothalamus, but it gets released into the bloodstream from a little spot called the posterior pituitary gland. And from there, it's off to the races, traveling through the blood vessels carrying one single simple instruction for one very specific target. So, the message is in the mail, traveling at the speed of the bloodstream. Let's follow that oxytocin molecule all the way back down to the udder and see what happens when it finally gets delivered. This whole thing happens on a surprisingly tight schedule.
From the very first touch, it only takes about 30 seconds for oxytocin levels to peak in the cow's blood. That's why dairy farmers have this critical window, about 90 to 120 seconds, to get the milking machine on. They literally have to work in perfect sync with the cow's internal clock to catch that hormonal wave.
So this system is incredibly efficient when it works, but it's also pretty fragile. There's actually a biological override switch that can slam the brakes on the whole process, block the unlock command, and stop the milk flow cold. And that override switch? It's stress. When a cow gets scared or feels pain, her body releases adrenaline. It's that classic fight or flight response. Adrenaline's job is to constrict blood vessels in places that aren't essential for immediate survival, and that includes the udder. It basically clamps down on the delivery routes, so even if the brain sends out the oxytocin, it hits a roadblock. It just can't get to where it needs to go. The squeeze never happens. And the vaults, they stay locked. Okay, so we've dug into all this fascinating science, but let's bring it back to the real world. Why does understanding this complex internal reflex matter so much out on the farm? Well, first, just think about the sheer scale of what's happening here. To produce just 1 single liter of milk, get this, about 500 liters of blood have to pass through the udder. That is a massive amount of work for the cow's body. It really drives home why getting the milk out efficiently is so important. This is why understanding the letdown reflex is absolutely fundamental to good dairy farming today, not just for efficiency, but for humane treatment too. It helps farmers get the most milk by timing things just right. It proves why keeping cows calm and stress-free is non-negotiable. Otherwise, that adrenaline just blocks everything. At the end of the day, it's all about working with the cow's natural biology, not fighting against it. So let's just run through that beautiful chain of events one last time. It all starts with a simple touch. That touch triggers a nerve signal. The signal travels to the brain and tells it to release a hormone. That hormone travels all the way back down through the blood, finds its target, and triggers one final powerful squeeze. And just like that, the milk is unlocked. It's just such a perfect example of the body's two major communication networks, the nervous system and the endocrine system, working together in perfect harmony to make something happen. It's a great reminder of all the constant, hidden biological conversations that are happening inside all of us right now. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other incredible biological secrets are just waiting to be unlocked?